Okay. By the way, if you're a little lost, you're normal. I was a little lost. I was a lot lost when I first tried to go through this. Okay, so we're checking if the email's present, checking if the passwords match. If there are any errors at all, we're just going to say we're going to return. So I'm sorry, if result dot has errors, return null. Right. So these are any errors apart from the email being taken, passwords not matching. If there's any other errors we set on our object, on our user. So if we have anything in our model, I don't think they put anything. No. So, but if you wanted to, no, wait, they do. So any of these will also kick it back and not save the user. Okay. So now we've gotten to this point, everything's cool. We've got a user that, I'm sorry? Somebody have a question? I thought I heard something. Okay. So we want to hash the password. So to do that, we're going to make a variable called, I just call it hashed. You can call it hashed. Let's call it hashed PW. Make it a little more clear. So we're going to use the bcrypt. So bcrypt dot hash PW. Okay, so the first argument it takes is the string version of the password. Where do we get that?
Get password.
Right. So it's the
New
new user dot get password. And then the next argument is the salt. And the salt is basically when they hash the password, they add what's called a salt, which is basically just a string of characters that makes it more difficult or more secure. So the bigger the hash, I'm sorry, the bigger the salt, the more secure. The problem though is the bigger the salt, the slower it goes, right? So the salt is pre-configured. I think it's like 10 characters. If you upped it to 20, then it would be like super secure, but it would slow everything down. So the salt is just think of it as like an added like if you go looking for a needle in a haystack, adding salt would be like pouring more hay on top. So bcrypt.
It's required.
I'm sorry.
It's required.
It's required. Yes, you have to generate a salt. Okay. So we got that. So now we need to take the hashed password we just made, and we want to replace the password that's in the new user object with this hashed password. So right now, the password, I mean, my password is password, but if it's, password or catlady123 or Hamza's is handsome dude 95, right? We want it to be the hash, and we never want to save the bare password, right? We never want to save catlady123. Okay, so we take the object, new user, dot, and then we use the setter this time. So we want to set password to the hash. Okay. And then the last step is instead of returning null, we save them to the database. Okay, so user repository dot save, and then we pass in the new user with all the data that's already in there, altering the password from catlady123 to that long string of gibberish, right? Okay. Questions? All right, here's the moment of truth. Let's see if I messed anything up. So if I go back here, oops, refresh, try to add the new guy. Passwords match. Okay, so I'm getting this because it's going to /home, which doesn't exist. So now let's check and see if it's in my database. This one. There he is.
Nice.
Okay. So now we can test the other. So now if I refresh this, come along and try to use the same email, it should kick me out. Cool. Always a little surprised when my code works. Okay, so now that's working. So if the passwords don't match, that works, and also the other validations they have in place also work. All right, so we're almost done.
9:55 a.m.
Thank you. It is 9:55. Okay, 5 more minutes. So we're finished with the service. I go back to my controller. Okay. So if the result has errors, this is where it gets a little tricky. I think let me finish up this first, then I'll go back and talk about this. So user service, new user. So I want that user though, right? So I want that user that I've created back here because I need to. The last step is to log them in. Okay. So I'm going to set this equal to a user. I'm going to call it a user. Okay, so now this user service, if everything's successful, is going to return a user, right? So this last step, user repository.save, that will return the user object that's created. Now in here, the last step, I need to take that user and log them in. So how did we log in a user in Python?
You saved them to session.
Save them to session, right? So this, if we get past this, there's no errors. So this is what we're doing right now. We store their user in the database. We did that. Now we need to log them in. So session dot set attribute. I'm going to call it user ID. And I'm going to set it to user dot get ID. Okay. All right. So now instead of getting that ugly no white label, let's make a route for our home. So let's say get mapping /home. Home. I don't know, home.jsp. Okay, so to get that to render, I'm going to go into my WebINF, make a new home.jsp. Just copy all this stuff. Okay, so now I can say h1 welcome. So if I try to register another user, let's refresh. Oh, come on. There we go. So I already have new guy. Let's Big Daddy. I don't know why I did that. Let's do Hamza as a username, so it's going to be Hamza the man. His email is hdog@gmail.com. His password is going to be password. password. Cool. So now we get welcome. He's now in, he should be logged in if I did it right. So now if I go to home.jsp, I can say welcome, user number, $curly's user ID. Okay. Make sense? Questions?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Now, what if I wanted to say welcome instead of user number 2, I want to say Hamza the man?
Username.
Okay, so if I did that, I'd have to query my database, right? So if I want to keep track of, like, if I want to say welcome to our view page, Hamza.
User.
Well, so I'd want to put it inside of my session, right? I'm pointing at the wrong thing. Right. So when where am I? I'm in login. Okay, there we go. Now I'm sorry. So if I want to have, like, I don't want to query my database every time the user goes to a different page. So if I want to say save the username, I would just say add that to my session, right? So user name would be user dot get
No.
username. Okay. Then I can say in my home page, welcome username. Right?
Can we have both? Can we have welcome the number 2 and
Sure. Yeah,
the
you
name?
can put it, you can put whatever you want in session, right?
Okay.
So it's not going to work for Hamza because I already logged him in, but if I make a new user, Veronica the Wise VDog at email.com, your password is going to be ASDF. Oh, what did I do? There we go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to do this on the belt exam. I'm not sure. Just saying. And that is register. And I did it in an hour and 1 minute. Any questions?
I mean, so that means it'll take me 2 hours.
Well, so
3 hours
now the
and
good
3
news
minutes.
is you basically, this just has to be working for the exam, right? You don't have to understand all the intricate details. I know it's a lot. It's crazy a lot, right? So if you need help getting it working, obviously don't wait more than 20 minutes. We'll get it working for you. And then going forward, you're just going to duplicate this assignment. And for book club, you're going to use this, right? And for the belt exam.